welcome back to Giant Leaps for Brandkind. I am really excited to have this conversation today. I am here with Andrew Cambouris, and he is a founder and the head of creative at Contrast Designworks, which personally is one of my favorite agencies in the world, to be honest with you. Just love the team, absolutely love the work. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Nat. It's great to be here. Super excited.
Yeah. So Andrew's team and Andrew and I actually worked together on a campaign, a big brand campaign for a fraud prevention company, kind of cybersecurity fraud prevention a few years ago. And I was just astounded with the attention to detail and just the ease with which his team helped bring some of our stories to life. And it was truly a collaborative approach. And I think that that's one of the things that, a lot of companies don't understand is how to have a truly collaborative in-house and out-of-house approach to, bringing brands to life. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about best practices for brand and creative. And yeah, let's hop into it. But I want to know all about you, Andrew. So how did you get where you are today? Tell us about yourself.
Well, sure. I guess I knew I always wanted to be in the art field. I grew up with a family of artists and art teachers, so I kind of figured I was going to be in this space, and I loved it. I went to design school in San Francisco at the Academy of Art, got my degree in graphic design. So I call myself a graphic designer. I love to still do all design. And when I was in school, I interned early at this Palo Alto agency, and really the goal of that was I wanted to learn every software possible. And it was great. I learned everything. Illustrator, Photoshop, obscure ones like Painter and
Painter Classic.
Yep. No, totally. Yeah. There was Bryce.
That's how we're the OGs. If you know Painter Classic.
100%. And I was just like a sponge. I'm like, I don't know where in design I'm going to land or what I want to do, but I loved learning. And the other part of that whole approach was, and to this day, really, like I never wanted to be limited by my technical ability to execute an idea that I had. And so I was like, well, I want to make sure I can actually do something that's in my head. And so that's what I did. And honestly, a big advice for anyone or designers or coming out of school or no matter where you are, but like, I highly recommend learning those tools. And even today, like I tell folks, master Figma, be a power user. You will do yourself a huge favor. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm still in that place where I like to do a lot of things within design. And so I graduated, I started at Michael Osborne Design, which for about 3 years was a small 10-person shop, really focused on package design, wine and spirits, and brand. And I loved it. Was my first mentor. He's a design icon. I still see him once in a while. And so I worked with him. And then early 2000s, the whole .com era kind of came swooping in. And, they wave stuff in front of your face of like, hey, let's do this. And so I did. And I left. But part of that was also to learn digital e-commerce. Like I did branding and packaging and those things, which were awesome, but I didn't know how to do digital, and that was emerging. I learned even HTML. I learned Flash, Fireworks, and I'm totally dating myself, but those were the tools at hand. And again, I wanted to learn how to do that because I didn't know if I was going to go digital or stay in packaging or whatnot. And so I kind of learned all of these tools, and I wanted to have options as I kind of landed. And so I landed at an agency after that called Silverline Group, and I was there for about 10 years, which I think is kind of amazing because that's a long lifespan for an agency. And
it sure is. Yeah.
I was a fourth employee. So it was very much startup mode.
Wow.
And I loved it. And I was hired on to basically kind of run the Dockers website account. And so I learned about, retail, fashion. I know anything about Dockers and khaki pants. If anyone has questions, I had a closet full of them because you really need to wear them when you go to those meetings. And so at Silverline, I got a pretty wide range of experience from, like I said, fashion and e-commerce to then, more tech work with Cisco, doing app development for C-level events, luxury travel I did. So I loved having the breadth of work, and that kind of rolls into kind of what we're doing now at my agency is having a lot of different deliverables and types of work that we create. And so I was at Silverline. We then got purchased by GSI Commerce, which is a public company of about 4,000 people. And then a couple years later, eBay purchased GSI. So
finding the perfect thing at the perfect price. That's the eBay way.
My journey kind of went from a 10-person shop to a 30-person shop with Silverline, 4,000 of GSI, and then at the time, 30,000 or so with eBay. So it was a weird time. I had 4 different business cards and 4 different emails, still doing different work for different clients. And so long story short, they kind of, when PayPal and eBay divested, we kind of had the opportunity within our agency. We were part of the eBay Marketing Solutions group, kind of gave us the opportunity to start this agency that I have with my 2 partners. And so we launched Contrast Designworks, and we're in our 8th year.
Amazing. What a journey. Mm-hmm. So Contrast Designworks, first tell me about the name.
The first thing I'm going to say is naming is really hard.
Yes,
okay?
It is. Yes.
The second thing I'm going to say, it's similar to naming your children. Think about nicknames or abbreviations that you're not really thinking about.
Yes. So association is a bad one.
Yes. Yeah. And so, the name was, coming out of those experiences, I really wanted to take the best and the worst parts, or shed the worst parts, embrace the best parts of these agencies that I worked at. And I wanted something that kind of had a name around, like, I don't want to just fit in. I want to kind of stand out. Like, what could that be? And I noodled on that for a long time. And it came up to the word contrast. And not to mention, I used that word a lot when I was art directing, and, too much contrast or not enough contrast, or, there's finesse within that word and from a visual perspective. And so that kind of stuck. And then Designworks had kind of a positive feel. I was inspired by DreamWorks. And so I'm like, it kind of has this nice thing to it. And then probably a first month in, our client referred to us as CDW. And I had kind of a cringing moment, but I've embraced it. And so, we don't offer IT solutions. So, and so that's really kind of where that name came from, of trying to do something different, think differently. Don't just do the status quo or things that have already been done, and really challenge our clients, challenge our team. And so that's really how that kind of, came to be.
And you guys are headquartered where? I know you're working all over, but you're kind of like concentrated in the Bay?
So we're in the Los Altos, Palo Alto area is kind of where our headquarters has been. We had an office in San Francisco early on as well. So so all local to the Bay Area, and most of the team is local as well. Mm-hmm. And so, it's been a journey.
So because of that, you've done a ton of tech company work, eh?
Yeah, just inherently kind of where we're sitting, and, we're close to Stanford University. We've done work for them as well. And, eBay, PayPal, all of those guys. And so, we're right in the middle.
Amazing. So, okay. So you are pretty much the expert then. So this is all about brand. And I think, the reason that I started this podcast is because brand, I've, been working with tech companies, my background and everything. Mm-hmm. And I work with a lot of engineering led companies, and just across the board, brand is seen as this fluffy thing. And I don't think that founders understand the value that it brings your business, or how much brand connections can actually drive revenue. And it sucks, because when it's this thing that when you ignore it, it's like you kind of have this hollow business, and your customer's ready to jump at any time. It's way harder to get customers. It's way harder to recruit, et cetera. And so that's the first misunderstanding. The second misunderstanding is that it's a logo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, we have colors and a logo. We have a brand, and they don't understand like the brand ecosystem and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
just to kick us off, like how would you define brand and what brand does for business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a brand is a feeling, it's an emotion, it's a perception a person receives, right? When they're interacting with a company, whether it's their product, a service, or their an experience. And again, to your point, we know a brand, it's more than a logo. I think of a brand having and needing ingredients, right? So within there are logos, there's color, there's type, photography, illustration, motion, voice, all of that stuff. And then what you do is you assemble these ingredients, you kind of push and pull them together to express the brand. And then it's all activated by touch points. So, anywhere people are in contact with your brand, whether it's product, packaging, social video, environment, at an event, even casual conversation or employees. And so, yeah, that's the fun part of it, of having these ingredients, using them in a meaningful way and activating them where everyone along the journey or consistency, they see these and you start to build that loyalty.
Yeah, I think you said the key thing there. It's activated by touch points. That's the kind of thing where I'm like, you guys, if we just put it on the website, make the website look really good, we're doing like a teeny piece of our job.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not always about having a lot of ingredients. They need to be meaningful. So it's just, if you don't have icons, it's like, oh, we need icons, check the box. It's like, well, do you need illustration? And if so, why? Like, what's that serving? How can you help? Photography. I mean, they're base ones, type, color, sure, foundation.
Yeah.
But they need to be meaningful, and they also need to, help you position yourself differently as well, from your competitors, of like, oh, well, they have illustration, let's do illustration.
Yeah.
So we really try to make it meaningful, and give them enough kind of tools in the toolbox. So if you're doing a campaign, or, you have all of these mediums that it's going to, that you can make them work statically, you can make them work in motion. And so you're kind of arming them with the most and the best parts of their brand. And then obviously keeping those consistent with messaging and visuals. Like that's really that's where it gets exciting.
Yeah. And I know that you guys are really collaborative. Like you pride yourselves on being collaborative, and I've personally experienced it. So when you're bringing these brands to life, like when you're working with a team that has like in-house talent or, a strategist or a marketing leader, like how do you approach that process? Because we've done it together, but I think it'd be great for people to understand like how that works well.
Yeah. It kind of starts with how we operate internally. Like we kind of have this unwritten thing of like, there's just no egos allowed. There's no jerks allowed. It's like, I've always said, it's like, it's not the Andrew show. Like, no. Okay. So that right there of we're all in this too, we're all in the same boat. We're trying to get to the best spot. So no matter who's in the boat, client, my team, partners, whatever, like it's kind of like, let's roll up our sleeves, dive in. We're in this together. It's really been our approach to it. We're not here to threaten a job or, take work or whatever. It's more like use us where we're valuable for you. And we love that because again, the goal is to get the best work out. And it doesn't really, from my perspective, it doesn't matter if an intern has the best idea or my most senior creative director has the best idea.
Yeah.
We're doing this together. And it's not just like, oh, that's the answer. It's oh, wait, that made me think of something. What about this? And so we're very mindful of how we engage, but we also try to let everyone like know where we're coming from too. Like we're here to help you guys out. How can we help you? It's not, we're going to come in and tell you what you should do. I mean, we have conversations, but we're pretty mindful of how we engage. Again, for them to be comfortable. And honestly, what it's about is building trust.
Yeah.
Like we don't, like I said, we want them to feel comfortable with us. And even how we're working with brand teams now, like it's changed where it's less of the formal presentations, like, behind the curtain and, just watch a presentation. Like we'd love to show in progress work sometimes, if it's helpful, if it's a tight timeline, iterative, here's what we're thinking. What do you think? And having Figma and other tools to kind of help us do that. And so yeah, that's just really kind of the essence of who we are and how we want to help. It's however we can best get there. let us, use us as, you see fit. If it's a full team that you need, if it's a certain writer that you need, because we have expert folks that know very specific things. We have, designers that are pretty versatile across all things brand. So it's really that conversation of how can you best use us?
Yeah. So first of all, great explanation. I would say to anybody listening to this, if there are marketing leaders out there that are looking for agencies or partners, that's what you should look for. You should look for a team that comes on and they're like, here's our expertise. We want to get to know you and what you need. And it's our goal to make your life better. Right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Totally. And the other kind of new thing and somewhat how we've been positioned, especially with larger enterprise brand teams, in-house teams that, by the way, are like really powerhouses. Like they're really good, the ones that we work with.
Yeah.
They kind of use us and refer to us as an extension of their team.
Yes.
And that's actually really the way we actually work. And so, they're being asked to do more with less right now. Right. And so we're here to help them. So no matter if it's a big idea or a big campaign, or we need to execute a few things, we're here as your extension. And again, is it a full team? Do you want certain people? Do you want us, ad hoc projects? So that's really how we find value. And we think they get value as well we're easily, we can onboard quickly. I have senior team members who can anticipate the challenges before they happen. And again, it's just building that trust with them so they know, Contrast or CDW can take care of all of this work, and they trust us to do it right. And also to get to the point where we start to track, what would they say? You start to work with them. It's like, if I had to put on my, so-and-so head, what would they think of this when a marketer's asking me to do something? And so we also try to protect them. We try to protect the brand and make sure that, again, we like to push the brand, but we also want to be able to protect it and help the brand teams know that they have a trusted partner that's not going to let things go rogue and sideways and all of that.
Yeah. I think so. The interesting thing to me is like, hiring people, and a lot of the people on your team, they have experience being in-house previously. And I think that's so key because, like, for instance, I've got a client right now who is working for a software company. Like, she's the head of marketing, and you know how there's all these startups with like one person bands,
Yeah.
And then their boss is like, okay, we just need you to rebrand the company, stand up the content marketing and stand up sales enablement. Go.
Yeah.
It's like one person, and so she, we're working together and she handed me this thing and she's like, can you just make a template for me? Like a sales deck template in our brand? And I'm like, heck yeah, let's do it. And she didn't have a creative brief, nothing. She just like shipped me this thing. Yeah. And I went through and I made all these slides and she's like, how did you know how to do this? And I was like, I have stood right where you're standing.
Yeah.
And I know what I needed. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like, when brands and companies are choosing, at least make sure there's a creative director that has experience in-house being in those higher level positions like you were at eBay.
Yeah.
Because then you've been in that spot before. You understand, like, anticipate these needs before they know they need them, basically.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to use our example. We were bringing our, fraud prevention company to life. So for me personally, I was in-house at this time and I had, a lot of background in strategy and design and stuff like that too. So there, I had a lot of big dreams and we had a small but mighty brand team like you're talking about, but it was quaint and we, needed help with photography. And we needed to do a massive brand photo shoot. I know we did some other campaigns and things like that, but I thought we could go through how we collaborated together to bring the brand photography to life as an example.
Yeah.
So, I had a brand personality. I had, a tone of voice. I had all of this stuff. We worked on some visuals, things. So when you guys got that
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, okay, so what's the first thing that you do?
I mean, the first thing is to really understand what we're going to be doing and the purpose
Yeah.
of the photo shoot.
Yep.
And to make sure that, again, it's meaningful photography. Again, to my point of like ingredients, we want to make meaningful imagery. Because again, if you're doing a photo shoot, you're investing time and money. You want them to last you as long as you can, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it was defining how we were going to use them. And for this one, there was photography for different verticals as well. There were different stories we were telling. And so it was kind of mapping out, what those stories were, how we needed to tell those stories. And, I mean, gosh, with photography, there's the stock photography that you just cringe at. So we were excited to be able to look at the brand of the company and build out the photography that still had this trust feel to it, right? It couldn't be too sexy or too like out there. It had to be really authentic to who you guys were.
Yep.
And we felt like the consumers could see through it. If it's too like for example, like too many models or too many pretty, like, no, make it like normal folks or, a range of people. So we had a range of talent in certain environments. We wanted to connect it to the audience of these are scenarios that you actually do, whether it's, gaming or fintech, and we had the office space. So we had all these vignettes. And so without over styling things either, make it, have a little mess.
Yeah.
Like we don't need everything on a grid on your desktop. Like, no, there should be a stack of stuff. And so when we went through and thought about that, like, what does it really look like that looks real?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a fun shoot. That was a great shoot. I mean, and the other part of that shoot that we also wanted to think about early from we're doing this production was to also capture kind of video vignettes of it behind the scenes as well. So for social or any other placements, we kind of doubled down on having that talent, the locations, and again, getting the most out of that photography shoot.
Yeah. It was beautiful. I think like you said something key, like, especially when you're thinking about brand photography, but really anything in developing
Mm-hmm.
brands,
Mm-hmm.
that a piece of advice I got when I was really young was always design the little imperfection into it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
totally.
it makes it human,
Yeah. And that can be hard for some creatives because we're like perfectionists and everything's like a pixel and lighting and we see stuff, but no, I totally agree with you. And in fact, again, with like stock photography, sometimes it is too perfect looking. And so yeah, when you can kind of stage your own photography and be involved with the props and the setup and having that openness of here's real life, this is a real photo doing real things, like that's where it actually creates a lot of connection to people.
Yeah. Like so I'll give everybody an example so they can understand. We had one scene where a woman was hailing a cab. Hailing a rideshare. Because this was, again, a fraud prevention, et cetera, company. So they provide like the services for companies like Uber, Lyft, whatever, to protect consumer information. So one of the scenes was, a young woman hailing a rideshare, and you've got a couple, you've got so many choices to make that scene come to life. And, together with your team, we selected, like, you guys brought me models that look like they could be your best friend,
Totally.
It wasn't like, nothing against beautiful people. Beautiful people are great. But like, she didn't look like she'd stepped off the cover of Vogue, And like those little things, she like, when your team's like helping direct and all of this stuff, the motion of the scene as we're taking photos, we have some where she's just relaxed and she's just like, the way that you would really be when you wouldn't be posing.
Totally.
Yeah. And those little things are what makes a brand campaign relatable.
Yeah, and to that point of making the models, comfortable, a lot of it is the photographer and our art directors. You have conversation
Yeah.
with them, and you just start talking to them. And
Yeah.
part of when we're shooting, we're actually talking to them, and they're listening. And so there's not this like quiet like staged thing. Um,
Weirdness.
the other
Yeah.
thing I was going to say, I remember that shot because we were out in the street, and as soon as we were getting ready, a big service truck pulled up across the street, and and someone was like, "Oh wait, we got to wait." I'm like, "Do we?" Like that's
Life.
real.
Yeah.
And
It's
I mean,
real
we,
life.
and so again, and if it was really bad, like, yeah, we're not going to do that. We will wait. But it was funny because we still wanted to capture actually what was happening, whether it was
Yeah.
part of the story or not. It was like across the street, but it was like, oh, that truck just literally blocked this intersection or whatever it was. So, um, again, to that, this is a real shoot. This is what you see on the street. These trucks block the intersections or whatever it might be.
Yeah. It's a pain in the ass to get a ride
Totally.
share
Right.
and an ass off. And she's doing that,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we've all felt that pain. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, yeah, I was blown away by your team's I have always, it's really hard, I would say, to find other creatives who don't want to make things too perfect, and then it's really hard to kind of explain that sometimes to a founder or a client, because they, the thing that I get most often is like, I love Apple. I want to be just like Apple. I mean, every tech company in the world, I love Apple, and Apple does have this really like clean, like overly simplified almost aesthetic. That's Apple, so it's like, what does your brand want to bring to life? Like, and that brand specifically was talking about continuous trust and connecting humans and all of this stuff. So that really just exemplified it and brought it to life. And I've got to say, when we put that campaign into market, holy cow, like that was a really good year for that business.
Yeah. And we loved it too. And actually, before we did that shoot, you guys just did that rebrand. You had a new logo. There were some new parts of your brand. And so it was really exciting for us to also then, okay, well, how can we tell the story of this new logo? And we kind of extracted part of it. We had this concept around why we extracted it and the graphics that then ultimately got interlaced with the photography to kind of help tell that story of this continuous trust. So graphics with photography and messaging, when those are working in unison, it's like really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into something that I think maybe only you would understand. I haven't had another like agency owner run, you know what I mean? Like, so I want to talk about something because I think it's something that maybe founders and like clients don't understand as much. Paula Scheer. So she's been my personal idol probably my whole life. But Hillman Curtis, the late Hillman Curtis, he did this artist series a long time ago. And by a long time ago, gosh, I want to mean like when I still felt young, like during like, I think it was the great financial crisis ish. So maybe like 2009 to, 2010, something like that. But he, in this series, he basically filmed all of these designers and all of this stuff. And they're talking about their life and their work. And she says this thing that's freaking brilliant. And she's like talking about how she did the Citibank logo. I promise this is like, I'm going to have a point to the story.
Well, this was on the Netflix series of Abstract.
Oh,
right?
Was it?
Yeah. Cause she did there was a episode of Paula Scheer, on Abstract, the Art of Design.
Oh,
yeah,
maybe
fascinating.
Well, I mean, I don't know if she's talking about it again, but like after she's talking about the Citibank logo, and she was talking about how it came to her so quickly because of all of the years she had been doing design. And she said this thing where she was like, when you hire me, you don't just get me right now, you get everything that's ever inspired me, like every song I've ever listened to, every book I've read, every movie I've watched, you get her whole life. That's what you're hiring. And that's the reason that the answer comes simply. And I think like, what is it? I mean, what would you say to your clients or founders about what goes into your creative work? Like, what do creatives put into it?
Oh gosh. I mean, we put everything into it, to be honest. That might be a simple answer, but specifically my team and myself, like, I think it comes down to, we really care. It's not just
Yeah.
like, oh, we need to deliver X.
Yeah.
It's something that you can be proud of, have, longevity with,
Yeah.
something that affects people that they see or impacts them. And just really, diving in on that, and having a love for what you do, and an appreciation for the craft that you're blessed to have and the folks around you. But it's just having a lot of pride in what you do.
Yeah.
Is really the core of it, I think. And it can be on anything, like the actual deliverable can vary, but I think it's just the mindset of, and I've told this to, junior designers, I'm like, if you have to do a banner, make it the best banner you've ever done. Like, have some pride in it, because it's not easy to do a tiny little place and put all of the stuff in it. But whatever you do, just have a lot of pride. So I really try to, convey that. That's how I am personally as well. It doesn't always have to be a big project that's global that everyone sees. It's really the pride and loving what you do, and loving the challenge as well. Because all of these things are problems we're trying to solve for. So I get excited for that. And like, how can we do this? And, how can we leverage something that inspired us a few years ago that's relevant to how we're going to approach this thing? So
let's talk about measuring success or ROI. And I know this is not your bit, right? You guys are the creators, and you are doing what you do and doing excellent work that you think will be the most impactful. I'm doing a lot of similar stuff, but then on the back end, I've had to be the measurement person as well. So how do you give advice? Like when clients ask you about measuring ROI?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is you have to know, where you're starting from and what your benchmarks are to determine if anything is successful, right? So if you start there, then you can measure, whether it's clicks, sentiment, or more. But without the benchmarks, the numbers are kind of meaningless. But it's about defining those objectives. And so again, you can't measure success without understanding what you're looking to achieve. So we're big on starting, with helping clients to define what they want to achieve. And being pretty specific about it in the briefing process. Then like those objectives will dictate kind of what tools are put into place to measure success. And they can vary widely. So if it's a brand awareness, maybe it's a benchmark study versus like getting attendees to register for an event. Like you could see those results in a registration portal. So we kind of start with that of just, trying to define those.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So I will see a lot of, founders and things come to me and they want like virility, right? Like they want like, make us go viral, I want to be the number one known for whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's great. Can we get a little bit more specific? So like our goal here is to increase revenue. So how about we launch a brand campaign and then over the next 6 to 12 months, we see what our lift was, because brand takes a longer time to percolate. Right. So it's like, there's, it's interesting. I had, Pranav Piyush on here from Paramark.
You want clear and confident answers about the effectiveness and efficiency of your marketing investments. Don't stress. Paramark's got your back.
He's a measurement, launched a measurement company.
Yeah.
And he said this thing that was really interesting. And he's like, brand's the only thing that compounds.
Right.
That you invest in that compounds. And that's what makes it so hard to measure, because you might think like a year and a half from now that you're having success based on a specific growth campaign or whatever. But really that impression started, 18 months ago with this brand piece that they, you know what I mean? So it's interesting. And it's kind of like this backbone to everything else that you do.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So give us some predictions. So the world's getting more and more competitive. It's easier to go to market with all kinds of things, whether it's starting a fashion line, starting a tech company. You don't even need to code half the time anymore. So everything's getting more competitive and crowded. What role do you think brand and creative marketing will play in business in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I think right now the industry is seeing kind of performance marketing cooling off a bit.
Yep.
And, people are realizing that, throwing 1,000 things at the wall and hoping to find that one thing that sticks like 1,000th% isn't really the results they want. So I don't know. I feel like the pendulum's kind of going to swing back to a focus on brand and true creative solutions to solve, business problems.
Yeah.
And Airbnb is like a great example of that, right? Where, they shifted from performance marketing and decided to be, creatively driven and, with their brand and, and the design at the heart of their corporate story. And, I think it's done really well for them.
Ooh, tell people, because we've got a lot of founders that aren't like necessarily marketers. So dive into that a little bit more.
So it was, about, going back to the core of what Airbnb was about, the core host, the primary homes and guests. They did a campaign, get a place for yourself. They're putting it into the essence and resonating with those, the audience. And, they started highlighting specific features of, not just, like tree houses and off the grid cabins and all of that stuff. So I don't know, I felt like they really started to bring that in the forefront and, and have folks like just start to fall in love with, what they were offering. And also like, again, going back to like photography, like emphasizing that, showing me beautiful images, showing, up leveling that brand. They went through the identity update as well. So, so I don't know. I think I don't know. I love that stuff. So I don't know. I feel like that's, where it could go.
Yeah. And the funny thing with that brand kind of refresh and big brand campaign that they put out there is it was really human. Like they really focus on like almost to the point where like these little quirky things that make all of us weird and interesting. Like,
yeah. Right.
There is this,
right.
And you're just like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like,
but I can relate.
Yes. But I can relate. I do this weird thing too when I get into a new Airbnb or whatever it is, and you're just like, when I finally am like away from my 3 kids for, a girls trip or whatever, like, it was a really cool. I agree. That's a really cool example. What's your favorite like campaign that you've brought to life recently? And don't say the one that we did together because that would be cheap.
I mean, there's one that we did that was a tech company as well. It had to do with Kubernetes and the kind of the approach to, like I mentioned, like breaking you want to break the mold was if you looked at the competitors and kind of the work that they were doing, it all looked very similar. They almost, to the point of if you took the logo out and swapped it, you couldn't tell what the difference was. And so we took this approach of really, as you say, you zig and zag and to kind of create your space, but we went full illustration. Ooh. And it was a nautical theme because Kubernetes was this open source tool, and we were trying to help folks understand how to navigate Kubernetes. Yeah. And it was a nautical theme on the ocean. So you have things you can see above the waterline, and then there's a lot of stuff underneath the ocean you don't see. So we created this campaign that had a lot of those legs where you could tell how do you navigate it? And so we had illustrations of boats, and we had, the things you have to worry about. There are pirates ships and pirates coming aboard. And so you had, we told this really compelling story of what can happen, what you need to be aware of, how to navigate, how to see what's under the water that could affect your company. And so we had an illustrator who we've worked with, and she's amazing, that helped us create those actual illustrations. And then we had animated versions of them. So we could take them from the site to social and have them chaptered in these little vignettes and have messaging that was very targeted. But it was super fun because I love illustration. You don't get that chance to do that all the time.
Yeah.
And then you had full control of it. So, with a photo shoot, you're kind of, you're done. You shot it. Illustration is similar. And so you could always like fine tune certain things, but it was so fun and it was just different. It kind of made our brains think a little bit differently. But as far as the competitive set went between them and the others, it completely was like wow, what is this? Like, this is super conceptual. It's visually, looks amazing, or at least I thought it did.
Yeah.
But it told the story, and it told it in very logical ways. And again, a lot of the team that worked on that also worked on your stuff. And again, my team is, they're like the best ever. Like,
they're great.
I'm so lucky.
They're great.
Like, yeah. They're
you
all
guys
gems.
are my favorite ones some of my favorites. I've got a couple favorites.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you. That goes a long way. I love hearing that.
But I have been working with, partnering with different agencies for like 20 years. And, and I've been in agencies and things like that. And I've got one West Coast favorite, one East Coast favorite, and one kind of British favorite. Yeah. And you guys are the West Coast favorite.
I love it.
So there you go.
I love it.
That's a big space to win.
Thank you.
The other thing that this brings to mind, and I'm making an assumption here based on my experience, but it sounds like with that client specifically, you had a lot of creative freedom.
We did. We also had, and I don't, the clients themselves or some of the stakeholders, I don't know if they knew what they were in for either. Like, I think they were almost expecting to see something very familiar and safe to them. And so again, when we approach concepts, we have this mild to wild mentality, and knowing the guardrails of a brand and knowing how to kind of ram into the guardrails once in a while. And this one kind of snuck over top of it a little bit. And it was great. They were super open and they loved it as far as, how we approached it and justifying and rationalizing, like, this is a concept and this is what the story we're telling. But I don't think they were quite ready for that, but they loved it. They're like, this is awesome. We, really appreciated the range that we show, because that's actually just our normal process of whether it's a logo or a campaign. It's like, we're going to do something that makes you relax when you see it. It's safe, solid, it totally works. And then we're going to evolve it more and purposefully, because sometimes, when you make someone uncomfortable, it either has them go, actually, that works, or they freak out and they're like, actually, this justifies why I actually want to take 2 steps back to right here. And so, and they all work. It's just more of how much do we want to really push this? Who are we talking to? There are a lot of variables around why you would do that. But they were a great client though. It was fun. Yeah.
For any of the founders and tech leaders listening to this who aren't in marketing, there's a reason that you get at least 3 concepts, 3 or 4 typically. And there's a reason that one of them is somewhat safe and expected. We all do this. It's so you've got a range of, comfort level. Basically. So typically the one that we think would work the best is a couple of steps away, but not every client's ready for that. So
right.
And so the other point of this is, and this is just like hot tip for all the tech companies out there, especially, honestly, in my experience, I've seen that the founders that can let go the most and trust their creative team to just run, those are the most successful campaigns. Those are the ones that everybody's talking about.
100%.
Do you think there's a resurgence in art in marketing, like the art? Because I'm seeing actually a resurgence in illustration and stuff like that.
I have too. And we've done a few other projects that incorporate illustration. And a lot of times it works because with a photograph, you're trying to get a certain audience and you're trying to get diversity or whatever it might be. Illustration really provides a lot of that flexibility too, to help tell the story. And you can also brand the illustrations to their color palette or something that really makes it more proprietary illustration. And so I think that's a really valuable kind of ingredient to have in those brands of, this is our illustration that actually we own, and it kind of has our brand on it. And so, we've seen a lot of that, and I sure hope it comes back even more.
I find a couple things. There's a couple benefits to illustration. So one, you don't have to stage an entire, when you stage a brand photo shoot, you obviously are going to run out of photos at some point. At some point it's going to get stale and then you'll have to stage the next round, and that's fine. But to do it right can get quite expensive if you keep staging these over and over again. Whereas you can just add to an illustration library one piece at a time.
Yeah.
which is really beneficial for startups, right? I
Yes.
mean, I think ideally you want to have both, but
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
good way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And then there's like the swag opportunity. Like just swag's
Oh,
really fun.
my goodness. We had such good swag. We had, oh, that's the most fun part sometimes of campaigns, or like, the swag items. Like, how are we going to turn this into, something, and not just a water bottle, it could be, there's so many fun things.
You
So,
guys, do you have like a big swag closet where you've got like examples from over the years, all the things?
unfortunately, yeah, they've always been in my office and they're taking up a lot of space. So
It's a storage wall.
A little bit, yeah. But I
Yeah.
keep them. They're great. They're awesome.
I hear ya. I have so many like rebranded hoodies. It's like I don't actually wear hoodies that much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
funny because over the years you rebrand and like,
Yeah.
you get the new hoodie.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
cute.
We would brand Converse shoes and all of that stuff. Those are fun too.
Cute.
But they're not in my size. I can't even wear them. But I have them.
Aw.
They're kind of a nice little item.
That is cool. That's very cool. Or like
Yeah.
you could have like the shoe of the year, how
Yeah,
like the
right.
trends change. Like that's how you can tell what year you branded the company.
Yeah, totally.
Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour, but I
Okay.
want to squeeze a couple more things in here.
Okay.
So I like to, ask, is there any other piece of advice that you would have for, founders, tech companies, et cetera, or marketers out there that are engaging with an agency to kind of bring brand campaigns to life? Like what other advice would you give them? What would you want them to know?
About engaging with an agency?
Yeah.
I would say, take time to really understand that agency, of what they're capable of doing, and really more of the approach of how they think.
Yeah.
And getting to, it's less of the actual output sometimes, but it's like, walk me through your process. Like, how do you think?
Yes.
And sometimes that's hard to convey in like a visual. And so for us, and the way we like to work with our clients too, is we're more of a relationship based, and we want to get to know them as much as they know us. And it's not always just, project done. And so for us, it's conversation, like get to know us, get to really see what you're potentially getting into, and how we're staffed up and who you're going to be talking to, because we're really open and you have access to our whole team. And so for me, it's just kind of that connection of approach. Like we kind of always say, like, we're people pleasers at heart. And so we're really engaged. We want to help. But I think it starts with conversations, of how do you go about doing this? And also conveying, what's their track record with clients and relationships, because we have a lot of clients that we've worked with, and we just literally follow their career as they go to company to company.
Yeah.
And that makes us feel really good because they trust us. We know them really well. And so I think that's a big part. Just get to know an agency, because they're all different as well. And you can't take them all at face value, like, oh, an agency, so check this box. It's like, they're all different. They're small, they're medium. They have certain approaches, certain sweet spots that they work in. So make sure that, if you need, a versatile agency, or if you need a certain thing, like, just understand what they're best at, what they can do, and how they do it.
Yeah. The other thing I think, like, to add on to that is, like, sometimes agencies work together, like they partner with each other. Like, for instance, like us two.
Yeah.
I do marketing strategy and execution to a certain extent, but like if I had a big brand photo shoot again, I'd be like, hey, do you guys want to partner? So like if I think the network matters a lot too.
Yeah.
Whereas
Sure.
like if you guys had a client that needed more of an embedded marketing strategist with a small team, you'd be like, hey, you should see if Nat's available. Like,
Totally.
So the good attracts the good, you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
and the network matters for sure.
For sure. And recommendations of, like, I've worked with this group or this agency or this person, also kind of adds a peace of mind of, like, okay, great. You guys know what you're doing. You have a synergy as far as how you work together. Those are also important things to convey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I like to end my podcasts, taking a page from Ezra Klein.
Mhm.
So what are 3 books or movies or series or podcasts that you would recommend to the audience? It could be on any subject at all. It doesn't have to be on branding, something that you
Yeah.
think is good.
Let's see. I mean, I guess the first one is a book that a former manager of mine wrote, and I really admired him. His name is John Couch. He wrote the book, The Art of Creative Rebellion. And it's a very inspirational book for creatives. It goes through kind of his career and stories. He's a kind of global design leader. He worked at Hulu and all of these other places, and his stories are really resonant, and they're good reminders. They're kind of some Yoda, like, don't forget these things as a creative and how business works, and to kind of stay true to yourself. So I love that kind of type of book. He talks about, giving up power in order to have power and trusting your team. And so those things resonate with me as a founder, and having a team that I really do trust, and I want them to do it and have them be empowered. So that's a great book. The second book is the one, I guess, from a business owner and a partnership, even of building a company. It's a book by Gino Wickman called Traction that we all just read. It was recommended from another colleague who has their own agency. They read it. And so it was very much of an aha moment of like, oh my gosh, yes, like there's basics like vision and accountability and how you run a business. So that one was a great one from a kind of business. If you're starting a business or you're going into a partnership, it's really powerful. Let's see what else. And I kind of mentioned it earlier. So there's a Netflix series that actually our team watched together as part of a offsite. It was called Abstract: The Art of Design. And so in there's all these episodes. One is, Paula Scher. One was, Jonathan Heffler with type, and Platten for photography. And, they're all of these masters, and you just kind of get immersed into their craft and how they came to be. And so you come out very, like I left there going, I want to be a photographer, or I want to do type that. Like, it was very inspirational. We watched it as a whole team, not just the creative team, like the entire agency. And so that was really fun. And then, there's kind of a random one of a podcast that I was actually talking to my team yesterday about, and I started watching it. It's called Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, totally unrelated to design.
Good. It's so good.
I just watched a couple yesterday. They're so funny. And honestly, it's good comedy relief. Sometimes you just need that in life. And so, that's another one I'm going to dive more into that.
Yeah, I think everybody should have like a go-to comedic like podcast that you can do. If you're having like a shit day or you're just stressed, you've got like a gazillion deadlines, like put something on for a second, go for a walk, have a laugh, you will come back and do better work.
Yes, exactly. It's very important. So,
well, Andrew, thank you so much. I think this has been incredibly helpful. Again, you're always one of my favorites to partner with. And I think a lot of our founders have gotten a lot of insight on how to work with an agency, what goes into creative work, all that jazz, which is all very important. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
All right. Chat soon. You've just listened to an episode of Giant Leaps for Brandkind. This is the podcast where I talk to business and thought leaders around the globe about growing businesses through the power of brand. If you want to support this effort, giving me a rating or review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Audible helps so much. And of course, if you're interested in marketing or brand support, you can find my contact information at nattinatlennox.com. That's NATINATLENNOX.com. Cheers.